Hey everyone, what's up? It's me, Blue Sirens, and today I want to talk to you about Rick Rubin's The Creative Act. It took me a little bit to read this book over the last couple of months, but I want to talk to you about what I think about this book. Is this book full of wisdom, or is it full of gibberish? Before we dive in, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. There are a couple of takeaways from this book, and one of them that I want to talk about is the idea of the source. Rick Rubin thinks that there is an energy, a power, a higher power. He calls it the source. Some people might call it the universe or God, but he thinks there's some sort of energy that is giving us creativity, giving us ideas. And as we tune into what this energy is, we are able to create works of art. Now, how do we do that? That's pretty much what the entire book's about, is how do we tune into it? And one of the things that he talks about tuning into it that I think is really important is understanding from his perspective that we are not necessarily a part of making the art. We are the catalyst that the source uses to create the art. Now this sounds kind of religious, and some people might be like, oh, that's some mumbo jumbo and kind of dumb, and I kind of agree to an extent, but I've also been in situations where I'm writing music and I don't really know what's going to happen next, and I just, it just comes to me and I start playing it. And that could be similar to what Rick Rubin says is I'm channeling the idea, their inspiration from the source, and I'm being the catalyst for it. Now, this kind of feels or seems like you're being used by a higher power to create art when you think yourself as the artist and it's coming from you. Again, this is like a weirdly religious kind of experience that Rick Rubin is describing, but the ideas that he lays out a little bit towards the end of the book around this, I think are really helpful. So the idea that he highlights, I think, is a great thing to adapt, is if we are the instrument, the catalyst for channeling the power or the energy from the source, we're not really a part of the equation. Like ourselves, our ego isn't a part of the equation when it comes to making music. And I think that's actually good, because if we hold on to something that we like or we really care about in a song, and it's not actually the best part of the song, it can blind us, and we aren't able to actually write the song to our best ability or channel the energy from the song or from the source into the song in the best way. So if we think of ourselves as just the person that is delivering the message from point A to point B, then we kind of can take ourselves out of the equation and be more neutral and be less emotional, less judgmental, and really just be able to say, does it sound good or does it not sound good? Yeah, you probably worked really hard on this guitar part or this piano part, but if you have the ability to step back and say, is it good or is it bad? Do I like it or do I not like it from a quality perspective? Then you might be able to make some more effective choices when it comes to the music you're making. This again is like one of those things where it feels oddly religious the way Rick Rubin describes it, but I get the idea of being able to stay neutral so we can determine if something actually sounds good or not. And one of the ways he says that you can achieve this is by knowing yourself, which is like the second biggest thing that I took away from it. Being able to say, I know who I am, helps us attune ourselves better to the source or this higher energy. And that lets us also be able to determine if the music we're making is something that we actually care about and actually want to release. It's not necessarily always going to be a reflection of us, but if we know who we are, then we're able to say, I agree with this and what it's saying, and I'm ready to share it or put it out. So it's a weird balance between knowing that you're not necessarily connected to it if everything's coming from the source, but at the same time knowing who you are and how you are connected to it lets you be able to determine if there's quality to the song or if it's something that you're invested in, you care about, that you're ready to release it. And it's a really weird concept, but when you think about it in the moment as you're making music, it does connect a little bit better. Now, the third thing that he talks about, he doesn't talk about this a lot, but when he does, he makes major emphasis on it, and that is dedication to your craft. Throughout this entire book, Rick Rubin is mostly talking about connecting to the source, staying inspired, how to be a curator and editor of your music to make sure you're putting out the best music or art possible. He very briefly touches on dedication to your craft, but when he talks about it, he puts a lot of emphasis on it. And ultimately, he says, if you don't have the technical ability, if you don't have the skill to play your instrument or play your parts, you aren't going to be able to properly channel what's coming to you from the source. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be a virtuoso or, technically highly skilled at your instruments. There are songs that are very simple, but they have a strong emotional sense for us. They inspire us. Lots of songs do this. There are plenty of pop, punk songs, rock songs, pop songs that are just 3 chords, but they have a really strong emotional way of attaching it to ourselves that we can't help but listen to them over and over. And the idea of being able to play something technically well necessarily isn't a factor in those songs. They're not technically difficult to learn or to play. So it is important to be able to be proficient in your craft and in your instrument, but the caveat is to know when the song is asking you to be technical and very proficient at your craft. It's not always required, but the more you know how to do, ultimately lets you enact on your inspiration and the energy from the source faster. And that's the bigger takeaway. Yeah, songs may not always require you to be technically proficient, but the more proficient you are, the faster you can capture the lightning bolt of inspiration, the energy from the source to make what that energy is inspiring you to make. And the last thing that I took away from this book that I think is really important for artists is the save button. Now, the save button isn't something that Rick Rubin came up with. It's something that I developed as I was reading this book. And the save button is the idea that when you release a song, it's done. You can't change it. You can't add anything else to it. It's finished. How that song is then is how it is and how it's always going to be. And that song is a reflection of who we are as an artist at that point in time. And we go on and we write the next song. We take our learns and our mistakes from that song and we apply it to the next song. It's a service to the next song to finish the current song we're on. We take those mistakes, apply it to the new song. We do that song service by listening and learning from those previous mistakes. And it's a constant loop. It's a constant cycle. Now, when musicians put songs on the shelf for a long time and don't release them, this may make us think that they're not learning from their mistakes, or maybe that song just wasn't really ready to be released. It's a double-edged sword of being able to grow from learning from your mistakes, but also being able to know, have I put everything into the song to where I'm ready to learn from it? Is there something else that it's needed? Again, there are so many things in this book that apply to just certain situations, and Rick Rubin will often say, this doesn't apply all the time, or this only applies in certain situations, and it's up to us to have that discernment on what actually matters and what applies to it. And this all goes back again to our main 2 points, I would say, of being attuned to the source and then knowing who we are. Because if we are in sync and can acknowledge those things, then we have a better idea of what's needed and what needs to happen next. It's a weird, almost faith-based action and thought process, but when you're doing it, it makes sense. And when you think about it too much, it seems almost like gibberish. But what do you guys think? Do you think the creative act was a bunch of gibberish, or was it a lot of wisdom? I think it was a lot of wisdom, but again, if you think about it too much, it sometimes starts to sound like gibberish. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.